The chain rule is used when taking the derivative of a composition of a function. This is expressed as f of g of x, with f of x as the outside function and g of x as the inside function. According to the chain rule, the derivative equals f prime of g of x times g prime of x. Let's do a few examples. Let's take the derivative of 3x plus 1 cubed. The chain rule states that the derivative equals f prime of g of x times g prime of x. In this example, this is the outside function, and this is the inside function. The outside function implies f of x, which equals x cubed. F prime of x equals 3x squared. The inside function implies g of x, which equals 3x plus 1. G prime of x equals 3. F prime of g of x equals 3 times 3x plus 1 squared. F prime of g of x times g prime of x equals 3 times 3x plus 1 squared times 3, which equals 9 times 3x plus 1 squared. Let's do another example. Let's take the derivative of sine of x to the fourth. The chain rule states the derivative equals f prime of g of x times g prime of x. This is the outside function, and this is the inside function. The outside function implies f of x, which equals sine of x. F prime of x equals cosine of x. The inside function implies g of x, which equals x to the fourth. G prime of x equals 4x cubed. F prime of g of x equals cosine of x to the fourth. F prime of g of x times g prime of x equals cosine of x to the fourth times 4x cubed, which can be simplified to 4x cubed cosine of x to the fourth. Let's do another example. Let's take the derivative of e to the x squared plus 3x. This is the outside function, and this is the inside function. F of x equals e to the x. F prime of x equals e to the x. G of x equals x squared plus 3x. G prime of x equals 2x plus 3. F prime of g of x equals e to the x squared plus 3x. F prime of g of x times g prime of x equals e to the x squared plus 3x times 2x plus 3. This can be rewritten as 2x plus 3 times e to the x squared plus 3x. Let's do another example. We'll take the derivative of the square root of 5x squared plus 7. This can be rewritten as 5x squared plus 7 to the 1/2 power. f of x equals x to the 1/2. F prime of x equals 1/2 x to the negative 1/2. G of x equals 5x squared plus 7. G prime of x equals 10x. F prime of g of x times g prime of x equals 1/2 times 5x squared plus 7 to the negative 1/2 times 10x. This simplifies to 10x over 2 times 5x squared plus 7 to the 1/2, which simplifies to 5x over the square root of 5x squared plus 7. Let's do another example. We'll take the derivative of the natural log of x cubed plus 1. F of x equals the natural log of x. F prime of x equals 1 over x. G of x equals x cubed plus 1. G prime of x equals 3x squared. F prime of g of x times g prime of x equals 1 over x cubed plus 1 times 3x squared, which equals 3x squared over x cubed plus 1. Our next example will be an example of a double chain rule. We'll take the derivative of cosine squared of x cubed. This can be rewritten as cosine of x cubed squared. F of x equals x squared. F prime of x equals 2x. G of x equals cosine of x cubed. To get g prime, you may recognize that we have to do another chain rule, where f of x equals cosine of x, so f prime of x equals negative sine of x, and g of x equals x cubed, so g prime of x equals 3x squared. To get g prime of x, we take f prime of g of x times g prime of x. So g prime of x equals negative sine of x cubed times 3x squared. So to take the derivative as a whole, we take f prime of g of x times g prime of x, which would be 2 cosine of x cubed times negative sine of x cubed times 3x squared, which can be rewritten as negative 6x squared cosine of x cubed sine of x cubed. Our last example is an application problem. Given that f of 2 equals 4, f prime of 2 equals 7, g of 3 equals 2, and g prime of 3 equals 3, and that h of x equals f of g of x, find h prime of 3. First we take the derivative of h of x. H prime of x equals f prime of g of x times g prime of x. H prime of 3 equals f prime of g of 3 times g prime of 3. So h prime of 3 equals f prime of 2 because g of 3 equals 2 times 3 because g prime of 3 equals 3. F prime of 2 equals 7 times 3 equals 21. This concludes the chain rule. Remember, calculus doesn't need to be made easy, it already is.